We did manage to bounce off this zone of support at about $58,000, which is absolutely fantastic. It has enabled Bitcoin to continue to rally up here. We did initially kind of trade sideways a little bit, and then we found support down here at $60,000 flat, which is good. It does mean that we have punched in a higher low, right? Our first low is over here. Our second low is now over here. What would be fantastic is if we can come back down here, set a low here, and then continue on, and we will have then our third higher low in this trend so far, which is absolutely great. But I am liking this development. Obviously, you know, every single time we've bounced so far, it has been quicker and it has been more substantial than this after we've set the bottom. So from that perspective, we're doing pretty poorly. But we have actually managed to tag this zone of resistance at 64, which I think is very, very important. And of course, based off our live streams, this is one of the key things that we have been talking about on the YouTube channel, that I would be expecting Bitcoin to reach that $64,000 zone of resistance. It's an important zone, but it's not the most important zone, in my opinion. To me, the most important zone is going to be up here at about $66,000, $67,000, and we are not there yet. So, you know, I do think that this is going to be the real challenge, and I'm not too worried about this particular zone of resistance. I think that, you know, some people that are looking to take profits before a potential tumble down are definitely going to be offloading their Bitcoins there, and that's probably exactly why we saw a little bit of a sell-off literally just earlier today, depending on which time zone you're in. It was a very nice close, and I think that's actually one of the main things I do want to focus on in this live stream, because if we look at this on the daily, okay, yesterday's candle here did finish in the UTC time zone. It did finish at about 62.6, 62.7, which is great. Yeah, 62.6 is where it closed, which is above all of the previous candles here over the last few days. But not only that, so too did our weekly candle close at that same price level, of course, because that was also the end of a weekly trading session right here. And it was also the end of our monthly trading session right here. So, you know, within one day, we actually reversed a lot of things. And this is actually something in my experience that happens fairly regularly. I've actually noticed this before, you know, quite frequently, I'd say, with Bitcoin. There's a good level of success here where Bitcoin actually tends to pull off really nice things when you get, you know, the daily and the weekly and the monthly close all happening, and the quarterly close, by the way. When you get that kind of combination, you actually tend to get really explosive price action. And that's something which I've actually noticed quite well in my kind of trading experience. I'll give you another, you know, very famous example of the same thing. If we take a look at this thing on the logarithmic and switch on over to the daily here, you know, take a look at what happened back here. We are going back, but this is one, you know, relatively famous example, at least in my life, where Bitcoin was kind of finding resistance continuously at this zone right here at about 4K. And, you know, it was right here on this particular kind of set of candles here where Bitcoin closed a weekly candle. Here you can see Sunday, 31st of March, 2019. It closed a weekly candle, a daily candle, a monthly candle, and of course a quarterly candle because it was the end of March. And all of those things combined could not result in Bitcoin finding a reversal, which to me was the sign that we were going to get a continued move up. It was actually precisely based off that. Those of you that were watching me way back in 2019, you're going to remember that I actually used this to enter a phenomenal long position. At that time, it was one of the biggest percentage profits I had ever made in my life. It was over 300%. So we did the same thing here. You know, that daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly close all happening on the very same day wasn't enough to drive Bitcoin down. So we kind of got squeezed in the other direction by the look of things, which I think is absolutely great because it can be a strong indication of the future direction of the market, at least for the short to mid-term. So I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm again having some slight connectivity issues. So if you guys can see everything okay, then please let me know if the connection's good. And do me a favor and smash those likes up as you are coming into the stream, ladies and gents. YouTube is not being generous with views at all today. So I want to make sure that we are able to push this thing out. But yeah, if we do take a look at this here, 64,000 is that zone of resistance. Why am I not too worried about it? You know, it's a level which we have actually tested quite a bit, you know, and we have found quite a bit of resistance here and even some really nice support here, right here, or, you know, over here, we found some nice support. Lots of instances of nice support coming off this particular level. But for me, one of the main reasons that I'm not too worried about it is just the fact that we were kind of like fluctuating around it quite a bit. It's definitely important. And like I said, I think bears are definitely going to be interested in taking profits up here because this is the first real zone of resistance that Bitcoin actually has anyway, above the 60K zone, right? So it is a very, very logical place to be taking profits. And I think people who are bearish are just going to basically see this as a kind of like, you know, rising wedge of some sort, which will end up breaking down. And obviously Bitcoin has printed no shortage of those throughout this particular downtrend, right? We've had a lot of kind of wedges that looked a little bit like this throughout the uptrend. I mean, they have been with varying levels of strength, but we have definitely printed a lot of wedges. And I think one of the things that we know for sure on this YouTube channel is that Bitcoin loves to repeat certain characteristics, but it might repeat them in different ways, okay? And one of those ways that it would repeat them is going to be in the form of different time frames, okay? So we're looking at the same pattern happening here that we saw, for example, here. It's just that over here it happened within, you know, let's say a day, and over here it happened within, let's say, a week, right? So we're still looking at the same thing, just on a larger time frame, and that's actually very typical of Bitcoin. So that's a good argument for the bears. You know, I think that really does strengthen the bearish argument, you know, in this particular case. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye out for. However, if we are able to get above this particular zone, then 66, 67 it is. And that to me is going to be the main test. I think it's the most important level where we've seen the biggest reversals and so on. You know, so that's going to be something that I'm personally very, very interested in this market. I think there's going to be some really nice trades that are going to be available up there as well. And speaking of trades, there are only a couple of days left on this huge campaign where you stand to win an Apple Watch or a bloody Tesla Model 3 based on your trading volume on Blowfin. It's definitely one of the best exchanges out right now, and you can find the link to it in the description below. It's at the very, very top of the description, and it is a no KYC exchange as well. So no pictures of yourself or your ID. Phenomenal access there. A lot of you guys have already been checking this out and you've been loving it. Only a couple days left on this campaign, but when you do sign up to Blowfin, you are going to be getting up to thousands of dollars in rewards to kickstart your trading, which is absolutely amazing. All you've got to do for those for those rewards is deposit and start trading. Let me know in the live chat how we're feeling today about this market. I want to know if we're feeling bullish and bearish as well. Let's come back to the video here. We've covered this resistance. We've covered the next zone of resistance. Support, I really don't want to see us come back down here. You know, I think that if we come back down to this zone of support now, you know, it could be something a little bit like this, which actually turned out to be okay for Bitcoin. But at this point, this level is so weak. It's such a mushy zone of support at this point in this market now, in my opinion, that I just really don't want to see it. I don't want to see Bitcoin return back down to this level. I think it would be such a massive, horrific blow to the market if we did end up falling back down to this particular zone at $60,000. And you know, I mean, realistically, could Bitcoin get a bounce? Yes, of course, but you know, it's happened too many times now that I just wouldn't really want to expect it. So I do think that Bitcoin's really not out of the woods yet. I think the number one thing that can actually flip this for Bitcoin now is flipping the 64K level, because while I don't expect it to be amazing, I don't expect it to be the strongest resistance ever, I do think that it would be useful to have, you know, at least one more level of support between us and freefall. You know, if we get up here, then at least we have 64K and 60K, right? Right now, we only have 60K and this very, very tentative kind of 62 level that I outlined for you guys a little bit earlier on in the stream. So that's something that I am definitely going to be interested in and something that I'm definitely going to be watching out for. Okay, so that's something that I'm looking at. If we go ahead and take a look at a couple of indicators to see what they are saying for Bitcoin, we are right in the 4-hour Ichimoku cloud right now. So this is an important indicator in my opinion. If we watch this indicator while the market is trending, while it was resistance over here, we did end up struggling a little bit, at least trading sideways. When we were moving up, it resulted in big bounces with some really nice wicks as well. Is it the most reliable on the 4-hour? Well, I think it kind of depends on how much we're trending. When we were trending quite nicely over here, yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, just absolutely insane in terms of predicting all of these support bounces. You know, sometimes not so much. So it's a bit of hit and miss in my experience, especially on this time frame recently. However, on the 4-hour time frame, and when the cloud is this thick, because the thicker the cloud, the bigger the resistance, or the bigger the support, it does actually tend to serve Bitcoin very well. So if the Ichimoku cloud is anything to go off, this is trouble. Okay, so you know, and it is fair to expect that even if Bitcoin is going to you know, and end up breaking out of the cloud, you might still see 1 or 2 rejections coming in first before that even happens. Okay, so you know, I think that's important to be keeping in mind in this market. Am I worried about it? Not really. However, there are more things stacked up against Bitcoin right now. We have a lot of daily EMA resistance here as well, which is quite a bit of confluence now, you know, starting to step into some somewhat concerning territory, in my opinion. $63,000, $64,000 range, where we're seeing a lot of EMA lines kind of bunch up and start to provide some problems for Bitcoin here. So I think that is important to be aware of as well at this point in the market. You know, this is definitely something which could be a problem for Bitcoin. It was a problem for Bitcoin as resistance, and it was definitely a great form of support for Bitcoin as well, right? So you can see a lot of support being found along this ribbon. Very, very clearly a problematic zone for the market. And I just think that the level, you know, that it's lining up with here being 64K, that's a lot of confluence. Let's take confluence a step further and continue to assess this particular zone of resistance. I want to look at the Fibonacci's here. And the reason I want to look at the Fibonacci's here is because if we start to see even more resistance lining up at this particular price zone, we have even more cause for concern. And we do have a 0.5 Fibonacci here, which is important. You know, some people don't really care about them. Some people think that they're quite important. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't really mind. Let's go ahead and take a total Fibonacci for the whole trend as well, because I am curious about what that's going to be telling us. And we do have 382 resistance right where we are now, but nothing in this particular range. So I think that is definitely great. Are there any more fibs I want to look at? Yes, there are. I want to look at one more fib just from our local low. And again, we have 382 resistance right where we are and nothing in this range. So it's nice to see that I at least cannot identify any kind of Fibonacci resistance at the moment. So I think that's definitely cool, going in Bitcoin's favor for sure. You know, and I think that's something I'll kind of continue to keep an eye out for, because Fibonacci resistance levels can actually be very problematic for Bitcoin. So if we don't have them, then that is definitely a great sign. Now, it looks like this particular price move has been coupled with Bitcoin's dominance rising up, which is very interesting, because it does mean that now that Bitcoin is moving up a little bit, that spotlight is shifting back onto Bitcoin. So is this a warning of things to come? I don't know, but it could be an interesting start. And similarly, you know, with the S&P 500 just trading sideways here, you know, that is definitely an interesting kind of open to the week. You know, if we do take a look at when this Monday trading session started, which was, where did this Monday trading session start? Started here. We saw a little bit of a drop, and we've now recovered most of that drop, which is great. You know, if we're able to kind of keep this tone for the rest of the week, and we do still have 3 hours left on this particular Monday candle for the S&P 500, you know, this could result in some more upward price action coming for the S&P 500. And it's worth noting that the S&P has been correcting sideways for 2 weeks now. You know, it doesn't look like much, but 2 weeks is a long time for the S&P 500 to be correcting. And I think the number one thing that this is showing me is that the S&P 500 for its correction is too bullish to even drop down right now. You know, so if this does have an implication of where the price might go, I think it's probably pointing up. And if it's pointing up, I do think that, you know, we could be seeing a nice little price explosion for the S&P 500 here, bearing in mind that the dollar is at resistance, right? So if the dollar does end up kind of getting a bit of a dip from here, you know, then that could also play into some strength for the S&P 500. And both of those factors, I think, could be very good for Bitcoin now that Bitcoin has finally woken up, and now that Bitcoin is finally doing something interesting. We've got Bond Girl in the comment section in the live chat saying Nvidia is down. That is why SP is down. It relies on one stock. You are somewhat to mostly correct. The S&P 500 is probably weighted ridiculously toward the top few stocks that comprise of the S&P 500. I do agree with that. You know, and I think that it is, you know, its performance is heavily dependent on those top 4 stocks, incredibly asymmetric, you know, and that might actually be something to do with it. But the bottom line is I still think that it has influence on Bitcoin. So to me, it doesn't even matter if it's not weighted particularly fairly. I don't think the market cares. And if the market doesn't care, I won't make myself care. So I think that's very important. Actually, you can actually counter me by saying, well, if the rest of the S&P is shit, then that would actually explain Bitcoin. So be curious to know what you guys think about that in the comments. Let me know. But let's carry on here and take a look at Bitcoin's more macro setting. Let's take a different chart and look at, which chart are we looking at? Yeah, we'll just take a naked chart, actually. I'm happy with this. And take a look at Bitcoin on a slightly more macro time frame. We have already talked about those daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly closes. Let's elaborate on that. You know, if we have a look at our weekly time frame here, we did manage to recover this loss incredibly well. We have just fulfilled the fractal so well compared to before. Bear in mind, this is Bybit's chart. So we did see some abnormal volatility here, but that's nothing to be concerned about. You know, that does happen on leverage exchange charts sometimes. Yes, it's kind of annoying, but you cannot really do anything about it, unfortunately. But the bottom line is that we have continued to kind of form this fractal really well, including with this kind of bullish hammer, which we've done actually way better this time. So if we're talking about the fractal that Bitcoin produced last year, well, we're doing it so much better this time. And I think that really is something to be excited about, something to appreciate in this market. If you are enjoying the stream so far, ladies and gents, double check that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, and of course that you have smashed those likes up as well. I've got a couple more bits that I want to cover with you guys, but I may have to head off relatively soon. But if we do see more volatility, I'm going to be right back here with you all on this channel for another live stream. Now, if we do take a look at this fractal setup, like I said, I do think we've been performing well. And a bullish hammer is a pretty good indication that you could see some more upward price action coming. Here's another kind of bullish hammer that we had, which did result in one more week of upside. Here's another sort of bullish hammer, and it did end up dropping down. I don't really like this bullish hammer. It's not that much of a hammer. There's quite a big wick up here. There's still a bit of a wick here, but it's not too bad. In my experience, these kind of hammers are typically actually very powerful to indicate upward price action, which is yet to come. So I do take this one seriously, and I do think that so far this particular Monday trading candle is off to a pretty decent start. So I think that's absolutely great as well. And of course, if Bitcoin does end up continuing to move up on this weekly time frame, there is no resistance until we get up to that kind of 69,000 or slightly higher $70,000 zone of resistance. So I absolutely love that. I think that's a very good sign. Now, on the monthly time frame, we have obviously also closed this monthly candle yesterday. A lot of things, like I said, happening just yesterday. This is a candle that displays indecision to me, and trading sideways generally also displays indecision to me. Now, there are two particular trains of thought with this kind of candle setup on the monthly time frame, and I want to describe them both to you. You kind of see where you fit, and then I'll tell you what I feel about it. Now, one particular school of thought for these kind of candles happening on the monthly time frame is that the market has blown up above its previous all-time high, but it has limited follow-through and it's probably going to drop. And that's exactly what we're doing again right here, right? We've blown past its all-time high, but we have limited follow-through, which is a sign that momentum is decreasing. So that's definitely a school of thought, which is actually pretty common. And I want to show you that with the RSI as well, because the RSI shows this to us beautifully, where we can actually see that we have been losing strength in this market here. Okay, our relative strength has gone down. And what we really need to understand about the RSI, because most people get this wrong, is that the higher your RSI, it doesn't mean the more likely you are to drop. It just means the stronger you actually are. Okay, so if you start seeing that the RSI is trending down, the number one thing that that means is that the market has gotten weaker. And that's actually a story that you can see very clearly here, because when we start setting these tops here, look at how much lower the RSI is. That is precisely what a bearish divergence means. It means that the price is higher, but we got weaker. And if you really want to be, you know, kind of scary about it, well, we have a much bigger bearish divergence here compared to 2021. You know, we've got a very high RSI reading at a lower price, and this time we've set an even higher all-time high with an even lower RSI, right? So definitely a concerning sign if we look at it from that particular perspective. And I think that's what that kind of school of thought really leans toward, which is basically that you've got to have follow through when you break an all-time high. You can't just mess around going sideways. Now, the other school of thought is that actually, you know, we've smashed the all-time high. We've set a slightly, it's about $5,000 higher, so it's not that bad, but it's not great either. However, we've stayed up this high without actually getting rejected. And instead, we've just kind of gotten comfy at this particular zone of resistance, which can be a very strong sign that we're about to break resistance. This is something that we've seen before many times throughout Bitcoin's history, and it actually can be very indicative of the next bit of price action. Okay, so that second school of thought basically says that, well, actually consolidation at resistance is a good sign, because you can't consolidate at resistance if you're bearish. The bears would have already driven the price down. You know, so how bearish are you if the bears can't drive you down? You know, so those are two different schools of thought. I lean toward the second one. Okay, I really like the second train of thought. I always have leaned toward it, and the reason for that is purely because it's the same thing as what, you know, I just mentioned. You know, I think if we were going to get rejected, we already would have. And in my experience, the really big rejections, they tend to happen pretty sharply, like these wicks over here. They don't tend to happen mushy like this. You know, so I think that's a big, important distinction. You can see this on the weekly time frame here. We did get a bit of mushy price action here, to be fair, but with a very, very clear wick. And over here as well, these are like towers sticking out from the skyline. But over here, we don't really have that, you know, so I do think that this is quite an important kind of perspective to be taking in the market personally at this stage as well. So that's something that I'll continue to keep an eye out for, and let you know what I think. Apple is pumping. Let's take a look at Apple and see what's going on over there. We do have, a little bit of a pump on Apple right now. Nothing crazy. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice stock market price action, isn't it? But nothing too crazy. Let's head back over to Bitcoin. I'm going to take a couple last questions and then probably head off for this live stream. So if you have enjoyed it so far, do me a favor and smash those likes up. A colon breeze saying the best TA on YouTube. Thanks, Sammy. You're very, very welcome, sir. You are very, very welcome. And while you are down there smashing those likes, definitely take advantage of the Blowfin offer you have, because you stand to get some very, very cool offers. There are only a couple of days left. So based on your trading volume, you're going to win what you see on your screen. It's a guaranteed thing. It's not like you're in a prize draw or something like that. You're going to get it. So that is very, very cool if you want to take advantage of it. And of course, if this kind of thing isn't your deal, it isn't your kind of cup of tea, but you just want some free money to trade with, then Blowfin will give you that as well when you deposit and start trading using the link at the top of the description. So that is very, very cool. I want to cover a little bit of the altcoins with you guys. Specifically, let's start off with Ethereum. And we have kind of already started to pull back. Bond Girl saying no downside targets yet. Good point. My bad. The main downside target is going to be 60K. You know, and I've kind of already... The reason I didn't cover downside targets is because I've said it so much over the recent week. You know, if we lose 60K, it's basically free fall as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to expect this zone to be another kind of liquidity grab zone where we do this. Could it happen? Yes, of course. Would I expect it? No. I think that we've tested it enough. You know, you're very, very lucky to get a recovery like this, let alone to get it twice. I'm not going to expect it 3 times. You know, and if that is the case, then I do think our next major zone of support is going to be down here at about $52,000, and below that is 48 and 44. Those are the only kind of key zones of support that I see on the chart below 60K, and I think that getting down to at least 52 is a damn near certainty if we fall below 60. So that is something which I'm personally going to be keeping my eyes wide open for. Let's take a quick look at some of the altcoins, starting off with Ethereum against Bitcoin, and we have seen it move down by just a little bit. Ethereum against the dollar, not quite at its zone of resistance yet either. So I do think it's just kind of lagging behind Bitcoin a little bit. Not a whole lot to say over there. Solana has obviously continued to perform incredibly well, and it looks like it's stabilizing above this zone of resistance, now support at about 143, 142. I think that if it can hold this level, potentially come back down for a bit of a back test, there could be a nice path to get back up to this kind of $165, $170 zone of resistance, you know, especially with the help of this nice little purple support zone here. So that's going to be something to kind of keep an eye out for. I don't want to make any predictions on if I think that's going to happen or not. Solana tends to pull off very impressive things, but at the same time, it does look like a bit more attention might be coming toward Bitcoin right now. We're actually seeing Bitcoin's dominance, punch in new highs as recently as, half an hour ago or so. So that's pretty cool. That is definitely very, very cool. Do I think we will hit 64K then go back down to fill the CME gap? Also been loving the lives lately, Sammy. Thank you very much, Jim. Do I think we're going to hit 64K and then hit the CME gap? Where is the CME gap? Please let me know in the live chat. Where is the CME gap? Actually, I can find it myself. Let me take a look myself. What's up, Dano Crypto? We got to do a collab. I'm very much down for that, dude. Hit me up on Telegram, man, and we can sort that out. Great to see you in the live chat, man. 66,000. That's the CME gap. Let's see if I can find that, because I don't see a CME gap at 66. Nope, I don't see a CME gap at 66. I do see this CME gap here, which I think the other viewer was referring to at about 61.5. That's the CME gap that I see. And I think, yeah, that is the overwhelming likelihood that bears are going to be expecting, is that we kind of get up into this 64K zone of resistance and then continue to move down. And naturally, of course, we would fill that CME gap. I don't really care about it, you know, but I do think that if we kind of fall back down into this kind of range, I don't want to see us get any lower than like 62. You know, I think that if we start dipping low enough to fill that CME gap, then, you know, this was basically just a shit fake out. And then we're back in this kind of range again, which would be really bad. Because when you test the top, naturally you have to test the bottom. But if you test the bottom, I think we just fall through. So I really don't want to see that. I'm not willing to tolerate anything lower than 62K. And I still do not see any CME gaps above where we are now. So maybe I'm missing something. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing there. Ladies and gents, I'm probably going to be calling it there. Let me just take a couple last looks through the altcoin market, see if there's anything else interesting going on. I got to figure out what's going on with YouTube. Maybe it's just a bad time of day. I don't really know. It doesn't really make sense. I must have done something wrong somewhere, but we'll check it out. And if there is any more kind of price analysis to cover later on today, any interesting developments, you already know the deal. We're going to be right back here on this YouTube channel, covering all of that with you right here. Dano, I wasn't even subscribed. What the fuck? Well, welcome. Thank you for subscribing now. I do appreciate that. King Edgar saying, I'm in a long position since 61.6. That is a phenomenal entry. And I hope that you have considered, at the very least, considered taking some profits up to now. I do think that 64 is going to be a logical kind of resistance zone for a lot of people. Doesn't mean it has to be for you, but I think a lot of other people are going to be expecting that. Sean, you asked for my opinion on Solana. I don't really have one, man. I've already kind of looked at it. I do think that, you know, if it's able to find support off this 142 area, we can go up to like 170. But yeah, beyond that, I don't really have a whole lot more to say on Solana. Just wanted to take a quick look at Pepe for the meme coin stuff, and nothing really crazy that I'm seeing other than potentially a bear flag, which could break down. But even that doesn't look super firm to me. So I'm going to call it for this one, ladies and gents. Thank you all for tuning in. If you have enjoyed this one, you know exactly what to do. And I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.